I want to say one more thing before we get to the text. You know, throughout the years, when people introduce me, they often say that that I empower women. Well, here's what I want to say to that. Anytime a black woman seeks to liberate and transform and heal our sisters, trust me, it's not just about the sisters. You see, because when black women are healed, when black women are set free, when black women realize our intrinsic worth and value, everybody benefits. Our children benefit. Our partners benefit. Our brothers and husbands and fathers benefit. Our communities benefit. So, as a womanist, my concerns are that black women are liberated, but so that there can be the transformation of entire people, of entire communities. And so I center the needs of black women, realizing that when we get what we need, everybody else will too. That's one reason. So our preaching passage this morning comes from 2 Samuel chapter 20. All right. Verses 1 and 2, I'm going to read from the CEV. And then the verses 14 through 22, I'm going to read from the NLT, the New Living Translation. The CEV, the Common English Version. And the text reads like this. A troublemaker from the tribe of Benjamin was there. His name was Sheba. And he blew a trumpet to get everyone's attention. Then he said, people of Israel, David, the son of Jesse, doesn't belong to us. Let's go home. So they, the people of Israel, stopped following David and went off with Sheba. Verses 14 through 22. Meanwhile, Sheba traveled through all the tribes of Israel and eventually came to the town of Abel. All the members of his own clan assembled for battle and followed him into the town. When Joab's forces arrived, they attacked Abel. They built a siege ramp against the town's fortifications and began battering down the wall. But a wise woman, somebody say a wise woman. Wise woman. But a wise woman in the town called out to Joab. Listen to me, Joab. Come over here so I can talk to you. As he approached, the woman asked, are you Joab? I am, he replied. So she said, listen carefully to your servant. I'm listening, he said. Then she continued, there used to be a saying, if you want to settle an argument, ask advice in the town of Abel. I am the one who is peace-loving and faithful in Israel, but you are destroying an important town in Israel. Why do you want to devour what belongs to the Lord? And Joab replied, believe me, I don't want to devour or destroy your town. That's not my purpose. All I want is a man named Sheba from the hill country of Ephraim, who has revolted against King David. If you hand over this one man to me, I will leave this town in peace. All right, the woman replied. We will throw his head over the wall to you. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn and called his troops back from the attack. They all returned to their homes, and Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. This is the word of God for the people of God. You may take your seats. Creator God, maker of heaven and earth and everything that dwells therein, pray that your spirit will speak through me so that the people will hear the word from you. Bless me now to preach with power, passion, and precision.
Yes, Lord.
Stand up in me. Use me. In the name of Jesus. Amen. God empowers certain people to become strategic leaders committed to protecting and preserving their communities.
Yes.
The Black Mambas are an example of such leaders. They are the world's first all-female anti-poaching unit in South Africa. These women have one goal in mind, and that is saving the rhinoceros from extinction. To save South Africa's rhinos, game reserves have experimented with various technologies, drones, thermal optics, and satellite tracking. But the only thing that has shown any return on its investment are the Black Mambas. The Black Mambas is a movement led by a unit of 26 African women with specialized training in tracking and bushcraft. They are committed to protecting their community and its valuable assets. Like the Black Mambas, the Me Too, Church Too, and Black Lives Matter movements were created and led by women, specifically Black women.
All right.
Amen.
These movements are needed because, unfortunately, in order to gain profits, prestige, and power, there are those who actually look for opportunities to steal, kill, and destroy the vibrancy and vitality of human beings and our communities. Such was the case of Sheba in our preaching passage.
All right.
Sheba was a man known for stirring up trouble.
All right.
We all know somebody like that. Every time they come around, it's gossip. It's talking about this one and backstabbing that one in the back. It's trying to compete for power and putting down others so that they can be lifted up. Sheba was such a man. He was unscrupulous. One translation calls him a scoundrel. He was a man who lacked moral principles, and he had a bit of power and influence. Right. It's dangerous when a scoundrel has power and influence.
Right.
Sheba had so much power and influence that he was able to convince the people of Israel to join him in a revolt against their king David.
Right.
And they did it. But now, before we go any further with Sheba, I need to provide you with a bit of context so that we can understand where David's head was at when all of this went down.
All right.
You see, David, in this text, had just returned to Jerusalem after running for his life. You see, his son Absalom, David's own son Absalom, had led a rebellion against him. Upon David's return to Jerusalem, he had learned that Absalom, the son who had him on the run, Absalom, the son who raped each of his father's concubines on the rooftop of the palace in order for all of Israel to see, had been killed by Joab, the military leader, despite David's instructions to Joab to bring Absalom back alive.
All right. Come on.
David returns to Jerusalem, only to be met with more drama. Woo! Drama here, drama there, drama everywhere. Now Sheba wanted his throne.
Right.
But Joab, the military leader, he wasn't having it. Joab, who is Joab? You see, it's important to really understand who these characters are. You see, Joab is also the one who conspired with Amnon, another of David's sons, to rape his half-sister Tamar. Joab was a bad man. Joab was a fierce and oft-times ruthless military leader. But despite his hot-tempered nature and take-no-prisoners attitude, Joab was loyal to the throne.
All right.
And so he set out to find Sheba and handle up on some business. The Bible says that Sheba, on the run from Joab, passed through all the tribes of Israel, and then he arrived in a town called Abel.
All right.
There in Abel, Sheba found safety.
Right.
Sheba found sanctuary and refuge. huge. The people of Abel were harboring a criminal but didn't know it. And so Joab pursued Sheba to the town of Abel. This could be like a movie, right?
Right.
Now, I want you to picture this. I mean, really picture this. Sheba, on the run from Joab, after causing a revolt against David, is hiding in Abel. Joab and his army have just arrived in Abel. It was about to be on and popping up in that city. Joab's men then begin battering down the city wall to break it down because they coming after Sheba. They coming for him. Then something unusual happened. Joab heard a voice. But not just any voice. Joab heard the voice of a woman. The woman was inside the city on the other side of the wall, but her voice was loud enough for Joab to hear her over the battering of the wall. Oh, there's a message right there for me, y'all. You see, beloved, there are times when a woman must get loud. There's a time when a woman has to raise her voice. Like when our children lay dead in the street because of the implicit bias of police officers. There's a time when a woman must get loud. We must raise our voices against discrimination and sexism and gender-based violence and any and everything else that threatens our well-being and that of our community. Joab heard the raised voice of a woman. Now, it's one thing for a woman, for a black woman, to raise her voice and get loud. But it's another for her to actually have something to say. You see, the woman of Abel had something to say. And I like the way she said it. Hear this. She said, listen to me. Come over here. I want to talk to you. Joab was called out. I need you to get this. Joab, the military leader of King David's army, was called out by a woman who had something important to say. But she wasn't just any woman. The text calls her a wise woman. I'd like to think this sister had womanist wisdom. Dr. Lynne Hollies, a womanist preacher and author, says, womanist wisdom is that learned by women of color who have grappled with the issues of race, sex, and class discrimination, yet continue to rise above the odds and the world's expectations. Womanist wisdom gives you a word of sage knowledge. It's not the easy way, but it's the way of courage. Womanist wisdom called out Joab. Anybody here ever been called out? You're about to make a foolish move, and a friend, a parent, or partner sees the mess you're about to make of your life and calls you out. They show you the trouble you're about to cause for yourself. Well, maybe you haven't been called out, but I can tell you I have been a time or two. And I will confess that I'm grateful for the people who saw what I couldn't see. I'm grateful for people who love me enough to tell me the truth. Everyone needs wise women in their lives. Women who have been through some things and came out more insightful and less afraid to speak up and out. The woman who called out Joab was a wise woman. Scholars say that most probably this woman in Abel was a district judge. A city in Abel, a city that was known for its fair and judicial system. The woman was a protector of her community. And she was a woman of influence. She was a woman who seemed to understand the rights of her constituency, her community, which meant she also knew, check this out, that Joab violated the law by attacking Abel without first seeking peace.
Right, all right.
You see, according to the law, peace was to be offered before a city could be laid waste. According to the rules of war, Joab was to have made a verbal appeal to the city before he attacked it. But he didn't do that. The wise woman in Abel knew what Joab was about to do was a violation of the law. And she possessed the courage to confront him with that truth, something no man had ever done.
All right.
See, by calling out Joab, by talking back to him, Bell Hooks would argue that in her actions, she positioned herself as Joab's equal. Let me tell you something, sisters.
Yes, come on. Come on.
You are not inferior to nobody.
Amen. Amen.
I don't care the position. I don't care the prestige. I don't care who it is. You are not inferior to no doggone body. None of us are, male or female. We are not inferior to white folks. We are not inferior to rich folk. We are not inferior to anybody. Which means we can use our voices to speak truth to power. We can use our voices to advocate for justice and fairness. This wise woman in Abel, by speaking up and out to Joab, the military leader, was in essence saying, you ain't better than me.
Right. Say it.
I got something to say, and I'm going to say it.
Right.
See, it was no small thing that no man had ever tried to negotiate with Joab, a fierce and unscrupulous sometimes warrior. I imagine Joab wasn't used to being called out. I mean, can you imagine that? But because she knew the law, she called him out anyway.
Right.
What's the lesson here? People, know your rights.
Amen.
Women, know your rights. On your job, know your rights. Know your personnel policies. Know the bylaws and the Constitution. Know the Robert's Rules of Order. Because you never know when you may need to call out someone or when you may need to call the system to account.
Right.
Because when you do, you better have your ducks in a row.
Right.
This wise woman of Abel, she called out Joab, and when she did something else. She interrupted the battering of the wall. Do we have any interrupters in the house tonight? This wise woman was an interrupter. I don't know if y'all watch the news, but a few months ago, well, in January, actually, there was a group of pastors who decided we were going to interrupt the MLK celebration at City Hall. We decided we were going to interrupt it because the ethics and morality in Dallas is inconsistent with the ideology and the moral vision of Martin Luther King Jr. How in the world could Dallas be 274th out of 274 cities in racial and economic equity?
Wow.
The Urban Institute did a study and produced that result. What does that mean? That means out of all the cities surveyed, Dallas is dead last in economic equity. What does that mean? That means we see all these high-rises going up. We see all these apartments going up. We see all these businesses going up. It looks like Dallas is thriving. And it is for some people. But then there are others who can't make a living wage. There's some others who are unable to get time off work because there is no earned paid sick leave. It's not required in Dallas.
Right, that's right.
And then we have this monument to white supremacy, this statue hovering over Dallas. It's a spirit of white supremacy in this city. And so we decided to interrupt it. And there were some people who was pissed off at us for doing so. But a month later, because we were making visits to city council members, because we were holding them accountable, because we demanded a vote to get rid of this monument, they voted in favor of removal of that monument. And y'all have seen it on the news.
Yeah.
The monument is coming down. Because we use our voices. group in Chicago called the Interrupters. They have one goal in mind, and that is to save a life. Their tagline in Chicago is, to cure it, you need to interrupt it. Chicago's Interrupters, through informed conversations and group meetings and consistent involvement in their respective communities, they disrupt violence. The wise woman in Abel was a violence interrupter who called out the one about to destroy the city, the community that she loved. Can't you see Joab's men looking around and wondering like, wait, what? What? Did she just call Joab out?
Right.
Don't she know who he is and what he's capable of? Joab, on one occasion, killed his own cousin for disobeying a direct order from King David. Joab wasn't nobody to play with.
Come on.
But she called him out anyway. But it gets even better than that, y'all. When she called him out, what does Joab do? The Bible says Joab came near. Joab was called out by a woman, and rather than get offended, he came near. Then she asked him, are you Joab? She wanted to check his credentials. Are you, okay, did you send somebody else? Is this really Joab?
Come on.
And he answered, I am.
Amen.
Once this wise woman affirms his identity, the wise woman then advises Joab. This all seems amazing to me.
Right.
Doesn't it seem amazing to you? Because I know some of y'all ain't never heard this story before, and y'all are sitting there like, good God Almighty, this is in the Bible. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. She says, listen carefully to the words of your servant. He answered, I am listening.
Yes.
He answered,
Right.
I am listening.
Yes.
Living Faith, can I tell you how much I loved reading that part? Joab responded to this woman who called him out in the midst of everybody, his military leaders and the whole town. He says, I'm listening.
Yes.
Oh, how different our world would be if more military leaders said, I am listening. What if we had more government officials who said to wise women, I am listening? What if we had leaders in the White House who, when a wise woman spoke, responded, I am listening? Wouldn't it be healing for someone to say to survivors of sexual abuse and domestic violence, I am listening?
Yes.
What if lawmakers would say to LGBTQ persons and transgender persons and gender non-conforming persons, we are listening?
Right.
Joab listened.
Yes.
Joab, the man in charge of King David's army, said, I am listening. Just as he was about to break through the wall of the city and capture Sheba, he stopped doing what he was doing. He laid aside his agenda. He laid aside his strategic plan and listened to the wise woman of Abel. He didn't try to mansplain his actions. He didn't assert his authority or power to make her feel small. He didn't tell her she was out of place. No, none of that. Joab listened. She spoke, he listened. This wise woman explained to Joab the historicity of Abel, how that the city was known for wisdom and making good judgment. She makes it clear to Joab that to destroy Abel was to destroy a city that was a mother in Israel. It was a go-to city for settling arguments and lawsuits because Abel was known as a city where right judgments always prevailed. The wise woman speaks, and Joab listens. He listens to a woman who had the ear of her community, a woman who knew the legal system, a woman of great influence. Joab listened to a wise woman who possessed the courage to confront him and show him the injustice he was about to mete out to innocent people. Joab listened to a wise woman who interrupted a siege, a confident woman who wasn't intimidated by patriarchy, by people, by politics, or power structures.
All right.
In this text, the wise woman uses her voice, her critical thinking skills, and her influence as resistance to the government officials about to destroy her city. The wise woman refused to be silent or silenced, Perhaps she knew, like Zora Neale Hurston, if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. She would not be silent.
Right.
There was too much at stake for silence. What was at stake? The city, the community,
Come on.
her home,
Yes.
her hood,
Yes.
filled with families and children and friends and businesses and markets and synagogues. The wise woman had communal concerns. She was a protector and preserver of her community. Every church ought to be a protector and preserver of the community where God has them situated in. Not just taking up space,
Right.
not just taking up the parking, but being about something in that community. What does the community need?
Right.
The women can find out.
All right. All right.
Let the sisters find out.
All right.
Let the sisters use the gifts that God has given them to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with God. This woman knew her community. And because she knew her community, she had the influence to rally her community to handle business with the one who put their community at risk.
Yes, yes.
See, many of our communities are at risk.
Yeah.
Some are at risk of gentrification. We see it everywhere, don't we?
Right, right.
Some are already food deserts. Some are at risk of unequal treatment based on race, sexual orientation, and gender roles. We can learn a thing or two from the wise woman of Abel, a woman who had in mind the best interest of her city.
All right.
I wonder, do our city leaders have in mind the best interest of all the people in this city?
Well,
Or just the parts of the city that they live in? Recently, as I told you, the Urban Institute completed a 274 city study to determine their economic equity. Out of those 274 cities, Dallas was 274th, dead last. And yet, business is booming.
All right. All right. My God.
City leaders and the wealthy are battering down the walls of Dallas. They're battering down the walls of Oak Cliff, South Dallas, and other parts of town with a high concentration of poor people and people of color. But the wise woman in this text, she had in mind the best interests of the city and all the people who lived within its walls. And because of her credibility in the community, she knew that the people would listen to her. Reputation is important.
Right. Right. Come on.
One's
Help
reputation
us.
is important. If you are going to be a change agent,
Come on,
if you
man.
are going to want to make a difference in your community, in your church, your reputation matters. When you say you're going to show up, show the hell up. When you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yes, come on now.
train it.
Your word ought to be your bond.
Show up on time. Go ahead.
Show us what she said. Yeah. My God.
You know, I remember a wise woman telling me once, she said, she said, every woman wants to be a wonder. Yeah, we want everybody to laud us. We want people to think highly of us. We want to be called to the big stage. She told me, she said, but listen, take care of the little things. She said, if you're supposed to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, be there at 7:55. Take care of the little things. Don't worry about the big things, because here's the truth. The world will make room for your gifts. When you take care of the little things, when you treat people right, when you refuse to be passive aggressive. You know how we do. We have issues with people, but rather than go directly to them, we go to everybody and anybody else and talk behind their backs, or we post it on Facebook.
Right. Help us today. You helping us.
Be a woman, be a man of integrity.
Right.
Take care of the little things. Care for people, like for real, for real. Love your neighbor, doggone it, as yourself.
Say it.
This woman in Sheba, she had a good reputation. So when she went to the people and told them her plan, listen, you want people to listen to you? You want people to listen to you?
Yes.
You got a plan, you got an idea, you got something that God has put on your heart to do, then woman be a man of integrity. Let people know that they can count on you. Follow up, return phone calls, return emails, take care of the little things.
Amen. Amen.
And so the woman in Abel, the wise woman in Abel, she took care of the little things. The wise woman in Abel handled her business. So when she went to the people of the town and told them her plan, listen, Joab gonna kill us. Joab gonna destroy this entire town. And all he wants is Sheba, a man who had a revolt against the king. All he wants is Joab, is Sheba. And here's what I told Joab. I told him that we would throw his head over the wall. Anybody with me? Anybody with me? Who down? Who down with me? Because it's either Sheba or our town. And this woman refused to sacrifice the lives and the well-being of her town for one scoundrel. It just ain't gonna happen. And so what this woman said in essence was, not up in here.
That's it. That's it.
Not up in here. Is there anything, church, that you are willing to say, not up in here?
Yes, Lord.
You just can't treat me any old kind of way. Not up in here. You just can't tell me any old thing and expect me to go along to get along. Not up in here. You politician down in City Hall, you just can't make me promises and not back it up with action. Not up in here.
Come on, yeah.
Some of us need to tell the world and people, not up in here. So we need to have some standards. You understand what I mean? And I'm not talking about standards like we heard when we was little children. I'm talking about ethical standards. I'm talking about standards of righteousness and justice and equality for all people. Some of us have to have some standards because we ain't used to doing that.
That's right.
What are you willing to die for? What are you willing to lay it all on the line for? You see, because Jesus Christ had some standards. There were some things that Jesus was willing to die for. There were some ethical issues that Jesus was willing to lay it all down on the line for. Jesus cared about the poor. Jesus cared about the oppressed. In fact, his mission statement is that I have been anointed to bring good news to who? The poor. To let the oppressed go free. Jesus had some standards. And Jesus was willing to risk it all. But here's the thing. That when we say not up in here, when we decide to risk it, when we decide to have the courage to speak truth to power, it is going to cost us. It is going to, what are you willing to pay?
That's it.
Jesus paid it all. What are you willing to pay to follow Jesus, to follow the ministry of Jesus? What are you willing to pay? You see, because Jesus paid it all. Jesus gave up everything, left heaven, came down to earth, lived the life of a human being. He once told one of the government officials, he said, now if I wanted to, I could call out 12 legions of angels to come down and destroy this whole place. But Jesus risked it. Jesus paid the price so that we could have an example, so that we could have a model. But it did not end there. See, there's always some good news when we risk it all for Jesus. You see, because Jesus, although it cost him, although he was nailed to a tree, although he died, he rose again. Resurrection is possible. New life is possible. But before we get to the new life, we gotta risk it. Before we get to the resurrection, it's gonna cost us. Before we get to the new day, we gotta give up something. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to say, not up in here? What are you willing to say not up in here for? What is God calling you to do?
Ain't it?
What is God calling you to do? I don't know. But what I do know is that we've all got a mission.
Yes, we are.
We've all got a purpose.
Yes.
And whatever that purpose is, it's not just about you.
Right, right.
It is about making life better
Yes.
for others.
Yes.
1 Peter says, use whatever gift we have received to serve others. How is God calling you to use your gifts? Don't live life purposeless. Don't live life just for a paycheck and a nice house and a nice car.
Ain't it?
Live life in service of God's good purposes. And I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard. God will bless you. God will open up the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that you won't even be able to contain it all.
Amen. Amen.
But that happens when you follow Jesus. That happens when you risk it all. That happens when you give it up and turn it loose. Amen. That happens when you make up your mind to trust God even when you can't trace God's hands.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Trust God.
Thank you, Lord.
Trust God.
Thank you, Lord.
Trust God.
Thank you,
Amen. Amen.